Welcome in, everybody, to the Science and Magic channel. I'm so excited for this conversation today with Lindsey from her company With Love by Lindsey. We're going to talk about self-worth and how to increase that in a really tangible way. We're going to talk about how to, especially as a high achiever, incorporate areas of confidence, more confidence into your life. So welcome, Lindsey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Amanda, for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background before we begin?
Absolutely. So, I have been a dancer my whole life. Growing up, I was a dancer, and I think a big thing with dance, but also just being a woman, is you wonder what role you play, what you bring to the table, how you show up in a space. And that was like a through line through my whole dance journey. I then, went to college. I stopped dancing. I worked a corporate job for a little bit. And then I decided I wanted to come back to dance. And through my journey of not doing dance, I had to learn, okay, who am I? Not within titles or labels, but who am I as an essence? What can I bring to any space? And that's when I think for the first time I asked myself those questions of self worth and confidence. And that's where I really, for the first time in my life, decided to define that within myself and not from external sources. And that's when my entire life kind of shifted. I stopped doing a career path that I wasn't as passionate about and started pursuing now what I do, mindset coaching and helping dancers do the same thing. And then I also went back to dance, danced at a high level as an NFL cheerleader and had a great experience. So it's a little bit about me, a little bit about what I do.
I love how you said I identified my essence without who I am as an identity.
Yes.
And that's really the core, I think, of what we'll talk about today. Self-worth, the definition is a sense of one's own value as a human being. So, as a human being, independent of external validation or achievement. And I think a lot of people, they glean their self-worth and their sense of who they are and what they offer to the world based off of what they achieve and what feedback they get from others. But what you're offering through your work and through your mindset coaching is this unwavering sense of inner value. And it's so important. Do you define worth and value as the similar, or are they interchangeable? Are they different? How do they have distinct meanings? Can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, love that question. I actually am going to tie it back to the definition you shared because that is the basis of all of my teachings is a lot of the times we start with the label. So in my instance, it's like a dancer, but you could apply this to any profession, any title that you would wear, whether it be mother or work professional, etc. A lot of the times we look at that as the whole thing. And then we look at who we are inside of that circle. And what I invite dancers to do when I work with them is we look at dancer as a title and then we see the circle outside of it, and there's so much more to the puzzle that a lot of times we leave at the door. And actually when we can learn to bring those in, that's when the magic happens because we're inviting our entire being into the space rather than a portion of us. So to
Mm,
your question of values versus self-worth, the way I see it is that it's similar, but I think the self-worth aspect is knowing the worth, whereas your value is inherent. And I think a lot of the times people try to earn their value or perform to get a certain title or certain gravitas from a space, but your value is inherent and it's not changed or earned based on what you do. And then I think the self-worth aspect is when you know that, okay, now how can I show up? And how
mm.
can I perform and impact because I know who I am and I know what I bring.
Yeah, value is like this deep. It reminds me of like depth, whereas the worth is how that's depth is showing up in the external world. Yeah. And so confidence comes from having high degree of worth. Is there anything else you would add to the word confidence?
Yeah, I think that confidence is really about understanding who you are. A lot of times when we feel insecure or question our abilities and that sort of thing, it's because we haven't actually gone within, so we fear what we might find. And this is something that's been so prevalent through my journey is I remember as a young dancer and early in my career when I really had I always I always feel like I presented confidently, but I didn't necessarily feel that fully internally, even if I was showing up confident, which I think brings up another point we can go into. But I think that like you need to have gone within fully enough to know, okay, this is who I am truly, not as a facade or as who I want to be, but like really this is my strengths, my what I value in life, like those sort of things. And when you know that fully, the confidence that you get from that is unshakable because there's nothing that anybody can say or do to question who you are. But where people get into trouble is if they think one thing about themselves and then someone says something to them that makes them question who they are, then they're like, oh, I'm not who I thought I was. And then that's really where we don't build that confidence within ourselves because it feels like our self perception is constantly changing based on our outside environment. So I really think that the truest confidence, and this is what I help dancers do, is the only way to find that is truly going inward. And this is where I think I have such a love for this journey because it looks different for everybody. If there was a one way ticket to confidence, we would all do it, of course. But the reality is that everyone's path is a bit different, and the way that they're going to find that is going to look different based on their life experiences and personality and those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, only true confidence can come truly deep within you. Like you said, that depth is really impactful.
The depth, the heart. And it's funny, I just did a reel on Instagram about the fear of being seen. And I find that one of the reasons women are scared of being seen is that there's something within themselves that they haven't loved or that they haven't integrated. And so that if they're truly seen, they're scared that that part of them will be seen. So not their full self. So they're hiding something. And I love having this conversation with you because you're a dancer and my work is a lot about embodiment. So there's posturing that comes with that hiding. There's an nonverbal cues that comes with the hiding. And I want to circle back how you said, I presented confident, but I wasn't
Yes.
confident. Say more about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think being a dancer, you learn performance. That's like one of the first things you learn. And so you learn how to show up. You might not feel a certain way. For example, if I'm a shy kid, I wouldn't say that I necessarily am, but just for this hypothetical, if I were a shy kid and then I were to go do a sassy in your face jazz, I better learn real quick how to perform that character, even if I'm not that person. And so I think as a dancer, I learned that early on. So even when I wasn't feeling confident, I knew how to turn it on in a room or in a situation where I don't look insecure. And because of that, I think people then, people read what you project. So then I've gotten a lot of opportunities and situations in my life where I probably wouldn't have gotten that if I didn't project in that way. But that doesn't mean that what I was feeling deep down, like there were times, where even if I was coming off in this very confident way, that I didn't feel 100% in who I was. And I think now being on the other side of, I've done a lot of healing work in the last year to do like the fear of validation is so true. That's something I had to heal through. And the only way to do that is really to do that work. So then it's no longer a facade that I'm putting on to appear confident, but it's truly just like, this is how I am in every aspect of my life.
So how does low self-worth, this need for validation, how does it show up in someone's performance, whether on stage or we can even talk about in day-to-day life? What does low self-worth result in behaviorally, cognitively?
Yeah, I think that it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. So if I don't think I'm worthy of an opportunity or of being seen or of any of these things, then that will continue to play out in my life because I will, or anyone would block themselves from moving forward or through other things. So it's really like yeah, just you become blocked. And people see cycles throughout their life, whether it be with a boy, you continue to date the same type of guy, or in a sports situation, you consistently, you practice, you feel amazing. And then on performance day, you forget the choreography or you screw up and do the same mess up every time. And I think the ways that it shows up in our life is in these cycles. And then the only way to break this cycle is to acknowledge it. Because then the second you start to acknowledge, oh, I've been here before. Oh, this is like happening repetitively. That's when you recognize a pattern. And a lot of the times these patterns, they just need awareness. Like, in order to break something, all you need is that awareness of this is happening, and then the next time it happens, now you do something different because you're aware of that pattern and you don't want to continue to repeat it. But the only way to do that is to continue to stay present in those moments too, because I think one of the hardest things, especially with low self-esteem, we don't want to think. We don't want to be present because we're uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable with not knowing who we are and not knowing like what we bring in those things. And so not thinking and just kind of doing and staying busy is actually a coping mechanism in and of itself, because you don't want to face the things that you're scared to face. But if you just did that, you would realize there actually is nothing to be afraid of, because I'm of the belief that like we have our brain that is conditioned over time. And I just use brain and heart because I feel like it's easy to kind of place within your body. But the brain aspect, it's like you think about when you're a baby and you're born onto this earth, you don't know that much up here, but we still have this heart that is so intuitive from the day we're born. We know how to ask for what we want as a baby, you don't even know that up here, but your body is doing it. And so I think a lot of the times when we're stuck up here, we are in a fear circuit of um, worried about what we'll find or worried about what's inside of us, basically. But if you just trust, I think truly all of us in our hearts, we are all amazing people and like we're all love at the end of the day. So, yeah, I think that the first thing though is that awareness of the cycles and being willing to break them.
Yep. You said so many things there that I could spark questions out of. I want to acknowledge this heart to brain piece because I know that your logo is a heart. And I want to add a tidbit of science into
Yeah.
this, that the heart has its own nervous system and it can independently process information outside of brain information. So it's pretty amazing because the heart does contain our essence, whereas the brain contains our conditioning. It is wired according to our life experience. So when I work with my clients, I do my best to get them into their heart because that truly is where essence is. And it's also how we can connect in empathy to each other. I love that distinction. And I was thinking about low self worth and how I've seen it show up in my life, in other people's lives. Other ways would be probably you talked about getting in the same repeating pattern with a relationship. I think it's also settling in relationship.
Hmm.
So thinking about your unwavering sense of who you are and allowing yourself to be out of alignment in relationship because maybe you don't think you're worth more than that. So that pattern, not having good boundaries within relationship, whether it's friendship or romance, I think I've seen low self-worth show up. Whereas if, a friend of mine or myself, we don't get an audition, we take it as a hit to our who we are versus like, okay, that wasn't a fit.
Yes.
So it hits really deep. Or if we don't get that job promotion, or if you don't get you apply for a job and you don't get the job, all of these things, if you don't have a high degree of self-worth, I feel like you can take personally.
Yes.
And then it messes with your energy and then it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, and I think that personally piece is huge, and I've seen it play out in almost every aspect of my life. For example, I being both a dancer on dance teams and then also coaching. I've coached a high school dance team for the last 2 years, and through both experiences, I've seen from a dancer and from a coach that the amount of things that are people are taking things personally, and it's not personal at all. And that's where then it becomes like you're not even addressing the reality of like the situation in real life. You're like reacting to this story up in your head that's not even happening? And yeah, so I think that it's pretty crazy that if you feel things like personally like offending you, a lot of the times we think, oh, the other person or the other thing is the problem. And rarely, it's so hard and it's not fun, but rarely do we turn it the other way and say, oh, maybe that's a reflection of me. Like if I'm triggered or bothered by this thing, that might be a reflection of me and healing that I can do and not of the other person. And I think that if everybody did that, I can't even imagine what our world would be like. It'd be so patient and calm with each other because we wouldn't be the constant finger pointing, but instead the thumb pointing and being like, I can take this back. This is something I can work through. You know, yeah, I think it'd be a very, very interesting idea if we all did that work. What could happen?
It's so confronting, but it's so empowering.
Yes.
And there's a book called The Compound Effect. I forgot who the author is, but if anyone Googles that, the author will come up. But I believe it's him. He talks about what percentage of responsibility should you take in a relationship. And most people say 50-50. He's saying 100% responsibility. What's it like to be in a relationship and take 100% responsibility? And already, if you're listening to this, and I feel myself, defenses might go up. Like, what do you mean, that person this? But if you have that unwavering sense of inner self and your power is within you and not outside of you, that makes sense. That goes along with that theme of the power is within me. I have this unwavering sense of self. I'm responsible for my reality. I'll hold myself in the best integrity I can. And do you guys like feel this confidence coming through as like I can feel my posture even changing as I'm saying that.
Yeah.
So there's something to it. By the way, I'm sure you're an amazing coach. I would have like loved for you to be my coach in high school doing all this mindset work. So important.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. But yeah, I think I agree. Like, even as you're saying that, I'm feeling empowered because the reality is we're never going to control other people. We can try and we might want to, but no matter what, whether you're in a relationship or you're a coach of a team or you're leading a group at work, we'll never be able to control other people. But what you can control is your own outlook and the work that you do within yourself. And so I think that to your point, it's the most empowering work, even though it's scary. And I think that a lot of the times that fear is what may block people from doing this work or engaging in this work because it is scary and you have to put yourself aside almost. But when you do that, just grounding within yourself that you're able to do is insane because when you push past fear, that's when things get awesome. You know what I mean? I say that even in a workout context or doing anything. Like, I think of it as an uphill mountain. You know, you're climbing the mountain and it's hard. Like, there's going to be resistance as you're going up, but then right as you're at that tipping point and at the top where the view's the best, it's on the other side of the hard work. Right. So even with this self work, it's the exact same way. You're doing a hard workout. You know, you have to do the hard thing, which is pushing past the fear and asking yourself really hard questions and giving yourself the space to be honest with yourself. But when you do that, you get to that top of the mountain and the view is breathtaking and you wouldn't have not done it to get to that point.
So walk me through, let's say I'm about to have a really big audition. So if you're listening to this and you're not a dancer, that could be you're about to go into a job interview. You're about to launch a business, you're about to launch a podcast, you're about to be seen, you're about to up level. And and I feel fear. So that's piece one. How do you coach someone who's in that just about to step into that audition space? And then step two is how do you coach in the feedback process of what the results are?
Yes. I teach a framework. I call it the SelfLove Framework. And this takes people from that square one of either I faced rejection before or I'm nervous, I'm scared, those feelings. And it takes them to a place of empowerment. So that's kind of the roadmap of where we go on this self-love framework journey. So at the start, step one is to discover that awareness piece. And this is really to zoom out. Sometimes with my clients, I'll use a cookie analogy. I love
Mhm.
sweets, so I always am looking for a
Me too.
sweet analogy. But I imagine a chocolate chip cookie, and imagine one of the chips on the cookie is your professional ability. So whether that be your dance ability, is when I talk with my dancers, that's what I'm talking about. Your dance ability is one chip on the cookie, or it's your professional ability. It's your whatever you're doing. You know, that's one chip. But then you have your sense of humor, how you work with others, the way that you
Mhm.
see problems, your speaking abilities. You have a trillion other chips on this cookie, so to speak, that is who you are. And so that's step one, is that awareness piece and just being able to zoom out. And then in the second phase, then it's saying, okay, now that I've zoomed out, what can I see? You know, what does that do for me? So once we have that awareness, we then can start looking for different options and opportunities in our day to day. So here's where I will talk through with my clients. We'll go through from one thing that happens throughout a day. You know, we make a bazillion choices every single day, so small, usually, sometimes big. But I'll give the example of if I'm driving in the car and somebody cuts me off in the car. That's one instance, and I could react in three different ways. Let's say there's probably more ways I could react. I could either slam on my brakes so I don't hit them, or I could either like pull over or something, or I could honk back or flip them off or something crazy. You know, so it's like
Mhm.
there's so many things that branch from this single um event that happens. And then if you think of it, I call this the opportunity tree. But think of this as the top of the tree, then each of those are their own branches. From each then their point, if I choose a different outcome, that branches then from there. So you can see how from a single point, now we have unlimited opportunities as we go down the tree, and that's our day to day. And what happens a lot of the times is people are in autopilot. Like I said, they don't want to be present because that means facing things. That means being honest, and that's scary for people. So instead, they remain in autopilot and they don't even see the entire tree. They see a single branch and they just go with it. Like it's their first instinct. They're not even thinking about it. And so in this second phase, it's about recognizing, okay, now I do have opportunities and I can see the ways that this could play out in my day-to-day life, through waking up and getting dressed and what I'm eating and what time I'm waking up. And there's unlimited choices with this tree and every single day. So then into phase 3, this is where now we have choices. Now I have to choose one. And how do I choose one? And I work with my dancers and clients here to actually kind of step back from the action path and do more reflection in phase 3. I find that if we start with reflection in phase 1, we're not yet open to kind of the abundant possibilities that are around us. So I actually start with that awareness piece and then come in with the reflection piece secondary. It kind of sets the tone for working with, seeing the different options. So once we're in this third phase, I'm having my clients gather data on who they are. So this I take them through another separate framework here, but this basically is like analyzing and asking for feedback within yourself and with like your circle of people outside of you, things about you. So this is like your strengths, what energizes you, what you want to be known for, what you believe in, all those sorts of things. So I'll have my clients kind of brainstorm those topics. Again, ask people from different aspects of their life, not just their two best friends. Ask your coworkers, ask your kids, ask teammates from 5 years ago. Get a different range of people so that you can see where that intersect is and really make kind of an informed decision. And from there, when they brainstorm all of those topics, they'll have them condense it into a single word, which I call your signature. And this signature becomes your North Star. This is what we're going to make every decision based off of. And when I'm telling my clients how to pick a signature, it doesn't matter the word. Like my word, it just needs to mean something to you. You know what I mean? So a word that could mean something to me, you might be like, I have no idea what that means, and it doesn't matter. Because this isn't like outward facing, unless you want it to be, but it's really about guiding your life through this word. So I really challenge my clients not to get too hung up on what the word is. We just want something that's resonant and empowering. When we then decide our signature, that's when we go back to that opportunity tree and we're looking at all the options throughout the day, the different choices that we can make. And we're now using this North Star signature as our guiding force. So now when I'm driving and someone cuts me off, now I think if I were embodying this word, how would I show up? What would I do? And now I have a framework for making decisions. And even if I don't feel like doing that, if I would rather flip them off and honk or whatever, but if that's not if that's not the essence that I am and am wanting to be, then that's not how I should show up. So this framework helps people break out of those cycles that we were talking about because it gives them a tool for change. Because I think that's a big thing. Like a lot of times people want a different outcome, whether they've auditioned or interviewed for a role in the past and haven't gotten it, or they're stuck in a relationship that doesn't serve them, like whatever the case may be, people want change and they want to live their dream life, but a lot of times they don't know how. So that's really what this framework is about. And then the fourth and final phase of this framework is iteration and application, because it's great to have a word and it'd be great if it was that's all it takes and now we're good. But the reality is it's like a New Year's resolution. How many people set goals and don't do them,
Mhm.
So really this phase is about how can we build this into our day-to-day life and be honest with ourselves and create the space for that constant check-in. So I guide clients into this kind of like thinking of it as you're doing your bank and you have deposits that you make daily. You're making those deposits of I'm going in the path of my signature, I'm showing up, I'm doing the things, and that's great. But there will be times you misstep, and that doesn't mean you just throw the whole thing to the wayside and say, oh, I didn't do it, now it's done. Just get back on the path. But what you need is a way to check the bank balance, so to speak, every single day. So whether this is 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, and this is also where it looks different for everybody. For me, since January of 2023, I've done a 3-page continuous journal, just brain dump style. I do that every single day, and that's my way to check my balance. Like, hey, how am I doing? in line with where I'm going or am I out of line? And then based on that, what shifts do I need to make? But you just need to create a space that allows you to have those conversations open and honestly with yourself. So again, whether that be through journaling like I do it, or it's through yoga or breath work, or even just taking a walk outside or having a conversation with somebody you trust. Like, you just need something daily that's a part of your routine that brings you back to yourself and just kind of grounds you instead of getting into that autopilot mode.
Hmm. I love the terminology signature.
Thank you.
I think that's really fun. So what you're saying is that your clients have this signature
Yeah.
essence established, and that is something to be accessed in these moments of up leveling. So I'm going to step onto this stage to audition, but I'm going to do so in my signature. I'm going to receive the results of that audition or that job interview in my signature. I'm going to have this hard relationship conversation in my signature.
Yes. And
Is that what I'm hearing?
yes, absolutely. And I think there's two things as you were saying that I wanted to mention. So the word signature, the reason I use it is because if you think about writing your name, like an autograph or you're signing something, only you can write it the way that you would. And like, think about like there's forensic people that can look into who wrote whose signature, because truly, even if someone tried to write my signature, they wouldn't write it the same way I would. And so that's why I use that term when I'm describing this word, this guiding force, is because even if someone else has the same word as me or something like that, it will never look the same as when I do it. And so really I love the concept of the signature because it is so empowering in it of itself. Only you can do it the way that you would. And so how can we lean on that and step into that? And as you were talking about showing up in an audition or doing the thing, really what the signature is about is it's a tool to stay present. And that's really the basis of it. So back to the audition example of we're not just using our signature at the big moment when we're on stage and it's the final thing and everyone's watching. How am I walking in the door aligned with my signature? How am I speaking to the woman next to me in alignment with my signature? Like, it truly bleeds into the entirety of the day. And a lot of the times when we have these high performance moments, whether it be a job interview or the big performance of whatever, we get so in our head because we're like looking at 50,000 small moments as one big thing. And that's so overwhelming. Anyone would be overwhelmed if you're thinking of this huge like concept. So how can we break that up and make it tangible, keep us present in the moment of like the entire day? So when I work with clients, I talk about auditions are long, and how can we not just worry about the moment when the judges are watching, but again, how can we just be authentic and in our signature from the second that we walk through the door, even before that? You don't want to have to be a different person in the different spaces that you're in. So in a professional setting, you don't want to have to come into work and then turn it on when you're there into your signature. You want to be in your signature because it's who you are. So that way, anywhere you show up, it doesn't matter who or what you're doing or who's there or anything. It's just who you are. And that gives confidence in yourself too, because you're not changing. You feel constant. And that gives that truly unshakable confidence.
And the worth. I mean, your signature, that's who you are. And there's only one signature of you in the world. So bringing it back to worth, if you're connected to that outside of these big moments and it's a daily practice, that it doesn't matter what's going on. It just means like if you don't get the job interview or you don't get the audition, you're still your signature. It's an unwavering, so what? I'll find another path that's in alignment with my signature.
Yes.
And it's such a powerful practice.
Yes. And I think that as you're saying that, a big part I don't think we've mentioned yet is also building the trust with yourself. Because it's one thing to know who you are, but it's another to trust yourself to show up. And doing these small daily habits of not just waiting till the big day to perform or whatever, but truly, how am I making my yogurt bowl this morning in a way that's of my signature? Doing the smallest things possible in alignment builds that trust within yourself. So that way, when you go to these big events, you're not like, oh my God, how am I going to handle this like pressure? Because this is who you are and you have that trust with yourself that allows you to forget about the nerves. They're still going to be there. Like, that might be a physical reaction, and you might actually have more to say on this embodiment piece of it. But, you still might feel anxious, but you don't have that question mark deep within your heart of like, can I do this? Because you do it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that piece of fear. And you said something earlier about zooming out. So You did talk about not seeing the full day and gulping it all, but taking bite-sized pieces, but also this zoom out that there's a whole cookie. This isn't just the chocolate chip, right? Like this, who am I as the whole cookie? And zooming out in nervous system terms is actually very strategic because when we're in a state of fight or flight, we're narrowly focused. So we're looking at that thing. I like to give the example of a lioness sitting in a meadow. And you can think of her posture when there's nothing there. She's relaxing, bathing in the sun. Her eyes are kind of slit down. And then she sees prey. And think of how her posture narrows, her eyes widen, her pupils dilate, and her body's activated. It's a very energetic state, but it's associated with physical survival. So, a technique I use to work with my clients in fear is to zoom out, to feel your backspace, to embody that lioness in the field and to see the big picture of things, right? So you can take bite sizes of the days. And I love that too, because that's being present. But it's this big picture of, does this audition really hold weight for who I am as a person? No, there's so much more. And that perspective will inherently calm the nervous system.
Absolutely. And I think about the times where I've had success in auditions or in job interviews or whatever just throughout my life. And it's never been when I'm in the energy of, oh my God, I need to get this. That's never when I succeed. It's always when I'm like, you know what? If it happens, amazing. If it doesn't happen, okay. And I'll be okay and we'll pivot to the next thing and or I'll try again. When you're able to detach your sense of worth from the outcome, that's when the magic can happen. Not even on the big days, but even in a practice setting. Because if you think about, we have like, let's say we practice 100 times the amount that we perform. Those 100 times, if you're constantly just waiting for that end goal or end date, every other day until then is so volatile. Some days you might be like, I feel amazing. I'm a winner. I am the best thing ever. And then you're going to have other days where that dips and you're like, what am I even doing here? I suck. I shouldn't even show up tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And when we instead stop focusing on that end thing and focus on every single day, like, how can we be a winner within our own terms? I'm not going and competing at practice. I'm competing against myself. So what does being a winner look like in a single practice and in a single moment? Because a lot of times too, like you're saying about the fear creeping in, it's when we're thinking from somebody else's perspective that's not our own. We're thinking, what will the judges think of me? How will I perform from somebody else's perspective? Instead of having that innate within ourselves, like I'm doing everything I can control. Because when you do that, there's nothing else you can do. So there's no point in worrying because you're controlling everything that you can.
Mhm. That detachment piece is huge because really, when we attach to an outcome, we're saying, I need this to happen to feel good about
Yes.
myself. And that's where the worth then lives outside of us and not within us. I also love the example of going on a date. And let's say that we're on a date and there's this person in front of us that was like, oh my gosh, I can see myself married to them already. I can see myself with kids. And you start to get super narrowly focused and clingy energetically. Now, think if you're the receiving end of that, it's kind of overwhelming and creepy and like, I can't provide your sense of, worth to you.
Yes.
And if you think of that dating analogy as the thing that you want, like you're going on a date with that thing, lean back, feel your heart, have this open sense of if it's aligned, amazing. If it's not, great, I'll have another date.
Yes.
And that's where that inner worth, I like to talk in analogies, as you can see. And I love the analogies that you're giving of the cookie and everything. So I guess we're going there. But that's what's coming to mind as you're talking about that detaching. Like, I'm just going to enjoy this date. I'm going to enjoy this job interview. I'm going to enjoy the process of becoming the person to inhabit it. We'll see what happens.
And that's what makes you so magnetic. When you do that, and when people do that, this is how they activate that magnetism that the job interviewer or the person you're on the date with or the audience, if you're performing, becomes obsessed with you because they're like, oh my gosh, they're so calm, they're so peaceful. I want more from them. But when you're in that opposite of like, I need to show you everything I have because I need you to say I'm good enough, they're like, I've seen too much almost. So it is kind of a weird game almost, but that's really how you show up in your power is you learn that detachment. And I love that you mentioned if it's aligned, it will. And that's just the reality. I feel like if anybody thinks back and is honest with their life, anything that they haven't gotten that they've wanted wasn't meant for them. And maybe the reason that they didn't get it is because something else that was more aligned was coming. But that, that lesson and that idea is can be hard in the moment to like, you have to have faith, and you have to just trust that that actually is true because in the moment, if you're, let's say you're giving something up and you're moving on to something else and you're like, well, I hope that that is the right decision. You have to trust that it is.
Yeah, and that's where the trust kind of weaves in and dances with the worth and the value.
Yeah.
I love your framework, Lindsay. I'm so glad to have you on this because there's a lot of resonance. So, for context, for those who are listening, I was at a dance workshop, and that's where I met Lindsay, and she gave a mindset workshop at the very end. And I was like, okay, there's resonance here. But I knew a little bit, but this is really our first time sitting down and talking. And again, I followed my intuition in my heart. And I feel like our work is similar, but with different language.
Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think, one of the coolest things about being in this space is the more people I talk with and the more books I read and podcasts I listen to, it's amazing because we're all really saying the same thing, but in a different way. And the beauty of that is that different ears are going to hear it. And that's the importance of these messages that both you and me, Amanda, are sharing is that people need to hear them. And, there's going to be different people that the way that you explain it is like, oh my God, I'm so seen. Or the people that hear it from me or the people that hear it from whoever else, like it's going to resonate with the different people. And I think that that's just the beauty is that we can spread these messages and truly impact lives with the work that we do. It's really cool.
Yeah, and not to mention our signatures. So your signature is different than my signature. So not even how we're explaining it, but just who we are and how we're being, how we're resonating. And I find that that's huge too. And so kind of coming back into that worth piece, it's essence. It's like really connecting to your essence and feeling confident in your essence. And then trusting that those who resonate with that, it's a right fit. Because at the end of the day, someone who isn't I always love to talk to my clients who want to work with me ahead of time. I spend, a good amount of time. We just have a conversation and I see if there's a vibration because if there's not, I don't think I can be effective at helping. So there has to be that feeling, that exchange, but it comes from connecting to my signature. I also like the word signature because it's a term like, oh, this is my signature course. This is my signature, that too. So it's kind of this little playful spin on branding, it feels
Yes,
like.
it is. It absolutely is. Very similar
Yes.
concepts.
Okay, is there a time in your career as a performer, even in your professional world, that you faced self-doubt? Like just a little storytelling. Is there a
For
specific time you
sure.
faced self-doubt and how did you work with it?
Yes, absolutely. There's more than one that come to mind, really. I think that if you're pursuing anything, self-doubt is actually a lot of times we don't see it as a good thing, but it's actually a sign, in my opinion, that you're on the right direction. If you're doubting yourself, that means you're out of your comfort zone. And how just impactful is that? I'm having signs of self-doubt. Let's reframe it, even that I'm like not to get discouraged, but rather that shows I'm in the right direction. I'm pushing myself to go past my boundary. The example that comes to mind is when I auditioned for my NFL cheer team. I was coming off 5 years of not dancing. And when I say not dancing, like I was nowhere involved in I didn't dance one bit. I lost all my flexibility. Like I truly I thought I was never going to dance again. And then I realized, okay, this is something I might want. And it started to get a little bit further in the process of like, okay, I definitely want this thing. I'm going to start doing it. And as I made that decision of like, this is something I'm going to chase, I'm going to audition for an NFL cheer team after 5 years of not dancing. That's when there was definitely moments of self-doubt through that of like my first couple times back in the gym and back working on my flexibility where I was like, girl, you can't even do your splits. Why would you think you're going to go make this cheer team? Or look at the other people auditioning. They've been dancing this whole time and on these amazing teams and XYZ. What makes you think you can do it? And I think it's really interesting that like the ways our brain says other people would say things, like they would never say that. Like no one would have ever like said to me in real life, you think you can do it because of this? But like that's literally what my brain is telling me. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I think that pushing through it as a sign of I'm in the right direction. If we can frame it, that almost becomes fuel then. Because it's like then we're now like kind of seeking that like negative self-talk almost, but like in a we're gonna push past it type of way. And then that's where it also comes back to that faith aspect and that trust of like, why can't I try? Even if my in this case when I was auditioning for the team, it kind of felt more than just me. I felt like I was getting a lot of signs and synchronicities in my life that were like, hey, you should try this thing. So there was a lot of times where I'm like, is this in my head? Am I just imagining these signs to be telling me this when it could just be nothing. And there's definitely moments of those doubt. But I think that if you just push through, and that sounds so kind of basic, just keep going. But truly, if you do, you'll realize there's nothing to fear. And I think a big thing for me too is back to that aspect of magneticism in
Mm,
the audition process. When I did show up to auditions, I feel like that hopefully that energy kind of came out of me of I'm here and I have a goal, but at the end of the day, I know who I am outside of dance. And if I don't make this team, then I will be okay. And I've talked with a lot of my who became my teammates because I did make the team. Multiple of them have tried out year after year. And they said that the big difference maker the year they made it was that detachment. And so I think it's super impactful when you can show up in that way. But I think another big thing with the self-doubt is if you can even just say it out loud or to yourself in a journal or whatever, like it stops it from being a voice that's kind of attacking you in your head, but instead puts it out and then you realize how silly it is. When it stays quiet and when we don't talk about it, that's when it builds up its power because it's holding us back from that connection with ourselves and with others. But if we can just have honest journaling or have an honest communication, like, hey, this is a constant thought I have, like, even just saying it. And the person you're talking to doesn't even have to have a perfect answer. If you're journaling, you don't have to have a resolution. But the second that you put it out there, you can look at it objectively outside of yourself and realize this only has power if I give it power. And I'm going to keep showing up regardless.
mhm. So it's adding awareness to your thoughts, which often thoughts are ruminating and they're fear based, and then leaning into the feelings. I love this part because for me over the years, I've learned that fear comes up and it still does public speaking in front of people in person for whatever reason. And I get tons of compliments when I public speak, but that fear, I mean, it's there. And now instead of resisting the fear, I lean into it.
Yes.
I'm like, give me another bite of that fear. So I run into it because I see these moments as opportunities for growth. It excites me, like you said, when the doubt's there, it's like, oh, I'm at an edge. So something's not wrong. In fact, if you have that growth mindset, you can say, this is opportunity. It's like, give me more of that. I
Yes.
can handle
I
this.
love the concept of running into it, and it actually reminds me of this analogy that I'd heard from a guy named Jason Strand. And he talks about buffalo, how they are one of the only animals that if they see a winter storm coming, they go into it instead of retreat from it. And often because of that, they end up more safe because they go into the storm. And I think that's what you're saying. When we see these things of fear or self doubt or even resistance. There's things that, that have been when you have something on your to do list for over a week and you continually resist it. Okay, well, why? And when we can go into that, whether it be with curiosity or just with attack of like, I'm going to go do this thing, that's the times when the most transformative work is done, in my opinion. I noticed that specifically within my journaling. The days that I don't want to journal the most are the days I need it the most. And usually when I do it after, I feel the best. So it's like if we can stop avoiding those feelings of fear or self doubt or whatever, and we can start almost chasing them and going into them with the curiosity, how much would our life be impacted?
Yeah, game changer, I think. So you're an elite performer as a former NFL cheerleader, competitive dancer, and you made the team. So then now you had to maintain the season in a resilience, physical and mental resilience. I'm curious about some of those challenges that you might have faced, either physically or mentally. I mean, as a performer, there's both there.
Yeah.
Kind of what surprised you? What did you have to do to make it through some things? Anything you want to talk to about this season?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, especially coming off of 5 years as a non athlete, I still was definitely in shape, like recreationally. Like I would do workout classes and lift in, all that stuff. So it wasn't like I was doing nothing, but definitely when I came back to being an athlete and I was like, okay, now this is a job, I need to be at my top performance level. So there was definitely a learning aspect that came with that. And I think a big thing for me, especially now being an athlete at age 23, instead of when I was in high school as an athlete, you have just such a deeper awareness of yourself and of your body and of aspects of yourself where now you can use things as clues, which I think I wish I had known this inside. Literally why I teach this to dancers now is because I'm like, if I had known this earlier, this could have been a game changer for me. But really, we actually do have all of the tools and the information that we need at our disposal already. It's just a matter of hearing it and seeing it. And so it's kind of back to that awareness piece, but really under the lens of curiosity and play and trying things. And then when it doesn't work, pivot. So I'll give you the example. For me, we practice on the team. It was in the evenings, 2 nights a week. In the summers, 3 nights a week. But it would be later than I would ever work out. I really prefer to work out probably no later than 5 p.m. because that's when I have my most energy, I would say. So I've never really had to be like super high performing at a late day time in the day. And so that was a big learning curve for me of okay, what does my body need both from a like food perspective and energy perspective so that I have like peak physical energy at this late time in the day? And then also what do I need to do mentally to feel, good with like the rest of my life because it's a balancing act. Like we're not just athletes. We also have lives going on outside of that. And so there was a lot of learning happening in getting into this new routine that was now my life when I did join the team. So a big aspect of that, like I said, was listening. And I would I felt like kind of before that, I was in that rhythm of 5 year, like when I was in college and right after, where I was like, I know exactly what I need to eat to feel great. I know what times I eat. I know what my journaling schedule looks like. I had all these things figured out. And then it's just like anything when you get into a new routine, don't be afraid to try things and listen to the reaction of it. So I would try to eat certain meals or whatever before being active, and sometimes it wouldn't sit right. And I was like, okay, we're never going to do that again. We're going to try something else. But I think that where people get stuck here, and this definitely happened for me too, is when things don't work, that doesn't mean you're not a good fit. It just means we need to pivot something small. And so a lot of times we either see like, I'm this thing or I'm going to throw in the towel. But instead of doing that, how can we do small changes instead? It's not that the whole idea or the whole thing doesn't work. It's that one piece of the puzzle is just a little bit off. So having that perspective, I think, really makes a difference. And I also think of it now as a business owner in that perspective and someone who started a business. If you start a business and it's not working right away, that doesn't mean the whole business idea sucks. It means maybe we try a different way of marketing, or maybe we try a different framework or whatever, like different platform. There's so many different pieces we can play with before we just throw in the towel. And so I think when it came to moments of adjusting to a new role, as long as you like are willing to and not give up, you will find success. It's just a matter of making those small tweaks.
Yeah, I know that I was laughing when you said about the business because I sometimes get the question, how did you start your business? Or did you know you'd be where you are today? Not a chance. It was a series of pivots over an extended period of time that landed me to where I'm at. I could have never predicted it. But because I adjusted, I listened, I danced, for lack of better words, with what was working and what wasn't, and I had stamina, here I am now. And it takes those things to really get you through. Sometimes things take time. They're not immediate. It's needing to zoom out. So you've faced a little bit of self-doubt as you auditioned, but then when you were on the team, could you hold that level of confidence, or within the mental resilience, did you have a hard time sometimes of kind of ebbing and flowing in and out of self-doubt?
I think they go hand in hand with the learning process, right? When we don't know something, we don't feel great because we feel like the lack of knowledge is a con. And of course, joining a new team, there's so much to learn. And I will like give kudos to the team that I was on and the culture that was created because it was never bad to be learning. And it was like, we know you're learning, like we are so supported. So I think that environment helped me so much because I think I would have otherwise probably started to compare myself or whatever. But I think that environment was definitely helpful. So making sure you're in a space where learning is acceptable, but then also having
Hmm.
that grace for yourself in that period of like, I'm not going to go from 0 to 100 or from a beginner to perfect in a week. That is just seriously not realistic. But sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves. And then when we don't perform 100% perfect after a week, we're like, we're done. Yeah, having that grace with yourself to be able to learn, it goes hand in hand with dealing with the question marks of am I capable of this? Am I good enough? As long as you have that trust with yourself, like I know I will get there. I know I will get there because I've done it in every aspect of my life before this. If you have that sense of trust, then you're like, okay, well, this is just another learning period. So it allows you to not take the small moments to heart.
You have such an awesome growth mindset. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you talked about, I want to get into daily habits, just a few more, because they're fun to listen to, and I feel like we can learn a lot from listening to other people's habits. You talked about
Yep.
journaling. That's a big one for
Yeah.
you. Anything else that you do on a regular basis to keep your mindset a certain way and to keep you performing optimally?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question because it makes it just so tangible. I think a big thing for me is I'm not strict with myself. I've tried that early in college. I did the like really kind of hard and fast of, what to eat, when to work out, what to work out, very regimented, and it wasn't good for me mentally. I feel like it just put me in a box and I don't do well in boxes. I just don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And so I honestly just listen to myself, but that only works if you're gonna listen to yourself in a way that helps, but then you know when to push too. Because some people will be like, "Oh, I'll just listen to myself," but then they end up never working out or never journaling or never
Yeah.
doing a thing. So you have to know when to give and take, and I think that's something where for me, I feel like it's always been a bit natural. Of I have no problem pushing myself and doing something I don't really want to do. Like it's not a problem to me, but at the same time, it's important to me to know when to rest. But I think some people are the opposite, where they have no problem resting, but they need the push. And so it's about knowing yourself. And I think that comes back to that. As long as you know where you are in that spectrum of I need the push or I need the rest, then it's about balancing it and giving yourself the one that you need that you're not good at. I just really go based on the season of life that I'm in and what I need in that moment. I don't know. It's a combination of different things, right? We could be pushing ourselves in relationships, or we could be pushing ourselves physically or mentally or within ourselves doing a lot of healing work. We could be pushing ourselves, but I think it's unrealistic to push yourself in every aspect every day. And I don't necessarily think that's good for you. That's just my personal opinion. Some people might want to push yourself 1% in every box and then you're being, you know what I mean? But I feel like for me, I try to find a focus for a period of time, whether that be physical, and then every other category is like maintenance phase of everything else. So I'll give you the example. Um, Over the last year, I mentioned earlier, I think that I was working a corporate job and then I had quit the job to start what is now my business. But before I could even really start my business, I had to go through a lot of kind of healing journey along that way. And so I would say the thing that I was being pushed in was that those like journaling and the hard questions and like that aspect of things. During that time, I wasn't going to the gym and killing myself. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't going and over exuding myself in other ways because I was already being pushed in this facet of my life. Because if I had gone to the gym and overdone it, or I had made my social life impossible, so I was trying to do this healing thing and I was trying to be social every day and I was trying to work out every day, like you can only do so much. And I think if I had done that, I would have given up and I would have maybe been like, oh, screw it, I'll just stay the way I am, you know? So it's about focusing your energy. And really, when you do that, then it puts this thing on a super growth pattern because it's the only thing you're focused on. And I've seen that time and time again with my business or with audition prep or whatever. You need to be able to have that focus. And that doesn't mean you throw everything else aside, but you give enough to whether it be relationships or to your health or to what you're eating or whatever. You give enough focus where it's not detrimental to you, but you're not pushing yourself in every area because that's just too much.
There's so many high achievers who are probably tuning into this right now, and I'm cheering for you as you're saying this because that's my niche is I work with high performers, high achievers, and I always laugh because I give weekly tasks to my clients and they don't need to be told to check those tasks
Yep.
off. They love it. In fact, sometimes if they fall off, the coaching comes with it's okay. You were listening to your body, you needed to rest.
Yes.
And I just love what you're saying about give 100% to something so intentionally and let the other things ease up a bit. I think it's such valuable
And I think
advice.
as a high performer, that's something knowing that if your audience is primarily high performers, that's something that's the hardest part is knowing how to take your foot off the gas without feeling like I'm giving up on myself or without feeling like I'm letting myself down because I want to be good in every area of my life. I want to have success in all the facets and I don't want to have to choose one. But I think that this is something I talk about with my boyfriend a lot because he's also a very high performer. We always say we're like, but when you're a high performer, your 60% could be somebody else's 100%. So you don't need to be doing your 100%, which is already high because you have that kind of value within yourself, or not value, but you have that you've pushed yourself all the time. So even if you show up in a 60%, it'll still be good. It'll still do the job and you'll be just fine, and then choose that one area to give that 100% because then that will be the thing that super grows. So yeah, you have that intention. But definitely learning to rest and learning that it's not bad. The productivity like debacle, it's like, I don't know, I just have to still to this day, sometimes I'll be just chilling, just totally just doing nothing. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. And then I need to remind myself, I'm like, no, I don't. I don't need to be doing that. And it's okay. It's actually helpful if I don't work every hour of the night, or it's okay if I am not doing laundry or housework or whatever. You know what I mean? You need those moments of rest. And a lot of the times the more you rest, the more power and impact and punch you can pack behind anything that you're doing because you have that energy stored up.
Yes, 100%. So I know your niche is dancers, but are you open to working with other clients?
I absolutely
Yeah.
am. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm starting with, so my business is around a year old, a little less than that actually. So, starting with dancers just because that's who I am. There's this quote by Gary Vaden, I think, that is, you're most powerfully positioned to serve the person you once were. So, that's really why I start with dancers. However, I know this work that I do has impact for everybody. As you saw through me talking through the self-love framework, it's applicable to jobs, to family, to relationships, to whatever you're doing. So I'm absolutely open to clients wherever. And I think that in the future, my business is at its infancy phase. So I think in the future, my work will definitely expand.
I think it will too. I know it will. I can feel it. I have a knack for kind of meeting people when they're at the early stages of their career. This has happened to me so many times, and then watching them grow is so amazing. You have a course called Breakthrough, A Dancer's Guide to Self-Love. Could a non-dancer take this course?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So really the thing with the breakthrough course, it's truly a guided inner workbook is really how I'd explain it. The metaphors I use are dance related. However, I think it's impactful for whoever, and there's worksheets that go with, there's 5 modules total. There's a video lesson, a guided worksheet, and then exercises in each module. And specifically the work that you do and you're guided to through the course is open. It's not super dance specific. So I definitely think that anyone would benefit. But I also will say, if you're curious if this would work for you and you would rather start with a conversation, if you're considering doing the course or whatever. I do one-on-one work as well. So I'd love to meet one-on-one with people and hear about where you're at and hear if that's the best solution for you or what is and how I can support you.
And I've linked all of Lindsay's accounts below in the show notes. You can find her course, her Instagram. I'm assuming they could send you a DM or an email. Yeah,
Absolutely.
great. Any final words of encouragement for someone who's struggling with self-worth right now? Let's say someone's tuning into this. They've gotten some, there's so many valuable nuggets from this conversation, but how would you wrap it up? Like, what would you say to them?
Yes. Yeah, I would just say don't be afraid to try it. And the fear, I think of fear like remember how peer pressure is taught in school? Like it's taught so clichély. And then when you're in real life, it's like, wait, it looks nothing like the way I was taught. So you almost don't expect it. That's exactly how fear shows up in our life. We think of fear like looking one way, but in reality, sometimes what fear looks like is the little voice in our head saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You're not good enough to do that. You're not whatever." And it's that little voice. So when I say don't let fear get in the way of becoming the best version of yourself, look at fear in all aspects. The voice in your head that's telling you can't, that's fear. Or even you subconsciously pushing somebody away because you don't want them to be too close, that's fear. Fear is they have a million disguises, and that's what it uses to control you. And so it's really about truly the basis of my work, and this is really how I would sum it up, is everything we do is either you're acting out of fear or you're acting out of love. And that's actually part of the reason why my business is with love, because I truly think that if we can do everything that we do from and with love, and instead of decentering fear and not getting rid of it, because it'll always be there. That's how our brains are wired as humans, right? Like we need to know if our lives are in danger or whatever, that's just part of being human. But using fear as a tool, then instead of letting it run your life can just change and you can feel more authentic and more powerful than you ever have. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up. But I'm so excited and so grateful to have had the chance to talk with you all today. And like Amanda said, please reach out if you think that there's any way that I can support you in your journey. I just really think that we all are here to live a life of purpose, of passion, and of love. And life's too short to settle for anything less than that.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for offering your heart to us. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.